Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Beyond Day One. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the interview process, and we're going to continue in that discussion by talking about how you're communicating in the interview. The data says things are not necessarily going well for Gen Z, and I want to tell you what it says and how to fix it. As usual, I'm not by myself. I'm here with a couple of friends. I'm here with Philip and Gen Z John, who are here with us. I should call him Philip X.
Philip
Uh,
X,
Ooh,
yes.
Philip X and Gen Z John. But
that's
we're here
cool.
and we want to talk to you. If you look at some of the statistics and data around the interview process, and specifically around Gen Z and early career professionals, you're going to see an interesting bit of information. And some of that has to do with how professionalism is being shown in the interview. Now, I'm not going to dig deeply into professionalism this time. We'll talk about that at a later date. But specifically, when it comes to conversation, some of Gen Z is struggling. When you're in the interview, some of the data is sharing, and even some of the conversations that I've had with others who are in HR and doing the interviewing, things like a casual conversation, casual language, slang, and yeah, just slang language. That's enough. And even just in general, unprofessional conversation or talk. I watched a video the other day that a gentleman was in an interview, and somehow or another he started talking about his colonoscopy, something that would not be appropriate
Uh-oh.
for an interview. And so with Gen Z, you guys, we've got to do a little bit of cleanup work in order to improve our conversation in our interviews. First of all, let me tell you, professionalism in the interview is an important piece of the puzzle, primarily because it begins to show that potential employer what they can hope to see entering their workspace. So if we start coming into the interview process and talking about, well, this didn't work out, so I had to yeet him out of the store. That might not be an appropriate conversation. Gen Z John, what are some other things that people say that wouldn't be appropriate for the interview?
Feel like you can get a little too comfortable with your interviewer, um, and start treating them like somebody that you know. If you don't know, I speak Russian. Russian has like two modes of speaking, right? There's like this very formal way of speaking and a very informal way of speaking, right? That's the way you refer to people, nouns and pronouns and whatnot. Formal way of speaking implies that you don't know this person, and then the informal way is implying that you do know this person very well. If you don't know this person and you speak in an informal way in Russian, the context is very rude and very aggressive in a way. So in my brain, it's like there are certain things where I know it's going to sound cheesy, but saying your p's and q's, sir, ma'am, just being very
Polite.
formal. Yeah, honestly, that can go such a long way. I think that when you speak professionally and dress professionally, regardless of where you work or are going to work, it communicates that you are taking this job seriously. Even if you're doing just manual labor type of work, communicates that you are ready to be presentable in that position.
Look, and the first words out of his mouth when you introduce him to one of your clients is, "What's up, my boy?"
Yeah, no.
You know, all of that kind of stuff. And so many Gen Zers are walking into interviews and they're treating them no differently than their normal street casual conversation.
Hmm.
And that is problematic because you have to realize, first of all, the person that you're speaking to may not be another Gen Z. In the world that we live in right now, it's not very likely that they are. And so some of your slang, some of your casual conversation is not going to carry over to them. They're not going to understand what you're saying. So they're going to look at it and say, I really couldn't connect with this person. I didn't understand what they were saying. Or you using casual slang and casual conversation to answer important business questions makes it look like you're disconnected or that you're not capable of understanding what's being asked of you. Philip, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think John hit on some great things as far as understanding, how casual can you really be when you're coming into a interview and you're dealing with somebody who's make it be from a different generation than you and that type of thing. And one of the first things that came to my mind was if you're calling them bro instead of sir, that's good. Probably going to be the first red flag, or even man. Like, it's good talking to you, man. Or something like that. That's not going to win you any points in an interview for sure. Politeness always wins the day, no matter what this. I mean, really, honestly, no matter what the age the person is, you can respond with a yes, sir, yes, ma'am. If you can go in there and keep the slang to a minimum, if at all, then you've already got a good head start on showing that you understand the context that you're walking into. You're not just being treating this like hanging out with friends at the mall, or the movies, or whatever. This is one of those things where you realize, okay, I am a candidate for a position that I want. I'm going to have to act like I take this seriously enough to be professional about it. And it isn't a matter of feeling like I'm not being myself, or I'm not being true to who I am and all this stuff like that. Uh, when it comes to these formal settings and things like this, nobody is 100% who they are when they're around their friends or family. That's just not, it doesn't even compute for you to be that way, because we're talking about different contexts require different sides of yourself to be presented. And so in this context, it's not that you're changing who you are, you're just showing the professional side of who you are versus the casual side of who you are.
Yeah, you just think of it this way. My name is David. I am a husband to my wife. I am a father to my children. I'm a brother to my sisters. And I am a son to my parents. I don't communicate typically with my parents the same way that I communicate with my wife.
Right.
Some of the things that I talk about with my wife, I don't talk about those things to my children, or if I do, it's not in the same way. Why? Because I can be completely vulnerable with my wife. I can tell her everything, I can lay it all out on the table. When it comes to my children, sometimes I can't lay it out that way because I either need them to follow an instruction or accomplish a task, and I need to be clear and concise in my communication. The same is true with you. You are a friend, but in this case, you're also a potential employee. And so you want to be your authentic employee self and communicate in a way that works for you in that environment. It's not that you stop being yourself, but you are who you are in that environment. And that's important. So, we want to introduce to you a way to begin shaping your conversation when you are having it in interviews. And that system is called PAR. It's PAR, and it stands for problem, action, and result. When you're having a conversation in an interview, the first thing you want to do, as we've talked about, is be professional. But then you want to be able to answer questions in a way that allows you to communicate to that employer your success or your progress in some of the things that you do. Some of the most common interview questions that come your way are: tell me about a time where you gave really good customer service. Tell me about a time where things didn't go well. What are some of your leadership qualities? What's important to you in a work environment? And there are others along those lines. But when you think about all of those questions, you first of all want to use the technique of story to communicate. Now, when we talk about story, we're not talking about, back when I was 10 and the wind was blowing and it was a moody night. We're not talking about that kind of storytelling. We're talking about shaping and taking what it is that you've accomplished and communicating it in a way that is not this, um, give and take that happens in an interview. They ask a question, you give an answer. They ask another question, you give another answer. and there's this back and forth tennis game that the two of you play, rather than turning that interview into a conversation. So when somebody asks you the question like, tell me a time where you gave really good customer service, we want to use the PAR technique, starting with whatever the problem or situation was. Well, there was a time when a customer came in and she was definitely looking for a very, very unique book, and she couldn't find it in any of the bookstores that she went to. We, of course, didn't have it in our bookstore either, but it occurred to me that if I searched in the lost books guide and see if I could find it, I might actually be able to do that. So I began to look through the lost books category and I didn't find it there. But then I found out who the publisher was, and I was able to call the publisher, and I was actually able to order this book for her and get it in time so that she got what she wanted, and she was really happy with our service at the end, and she actually became a very loyal customer to our bookstore. You see, in that conversation, I identified what the problem or the situation was. I showed the action that I took, which was I began to search for how to find the book, and I gave the results. Not only was I able to get the book, but she became a long-term customer for us. PAR. The PAR is laid out for you. Guys, when you think about that PAR conversation, Philip, maybe you have another example that we could use that would help people to understand how to lay out the problem, the action, and the result.
I think like what you're saying as far as like tell like one of the sample interview questions of tell a story about when something went wrong and you were able to kind of address it. That to me, you lay out the problem, what the issue was that went wrong, and then you talk about, when I saw that happen, I knew that I needed to do X, Y, and Z and take these steps in order to resolve it. And then of course, you want to come at it from the perspective of uh, the not only what you did, but also the thought process behind what you did. And then after that happens, you can have that result part to say, okay, as a result of me taking this action and addressing it how I did, now we put out that fire in one way or the other. So I think that'll be that PAR acronym is a good kind of a roadmap to get you through answering a question like that in an interview for sure.
And let me tell you, why is PAR so important? Because one of the things that communicating your answer in that way, it demonstrates thinking, and specifically critical thinking. It demonstrates care and concern for that customer. It demonstrates that you had you had the heart of customer service at the forefront of your thinking. You didn't just say in that example, we didn't have the book and send them popping. Your story wasn't, well, I almost gave good customer service. There was a lady who was looking for a very difficult to find book, and we didn't have it in the store, so I just told her to kick rocks. And your interview is your interview's over at that point,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
It's done. So you by communicating by using PAR, it communicates so much more than just what you're saying, and it helps you to be a remembered interview in the process, and it can make a difference for you as you go forward. This part thing is an important piece of the puzzle, and I want to encourage you to go back and or to check out right here on this page here on YouTube our webinar series from anxiety to confidence. In that, we lay out what PAR is, we give you more detail and more information on how to communicate in an effective way. Well, that's it for this time. I'm David, John, and Philip, and we're out. Turn the story around. Until next time.